telling stories is incredibly important, especially in marketing and probably in every other avenue of our lives. I think it's a lot more important than most people think. It's a great way to illustrate a point. It's a great way to convince someone of something. It's a great way to explain an idea. Most people do it wrong, and it's not their fault. It's just that this is the way that we were taught to tell stories. And I think there's a better way. And I'm going to use an example from last week's workshop at the expense of my charming husband, John. So in our workshop, John told a story of a time when he lost electrical power in his aircraft. And he told it the way most people tell stories. Let me show you what I mean. This is the way most people tell stories, is a chronological telling. Basically, they start at the beginning and they tell it till the end. So I was living in Indiana. I rented a plane and I called ATC. I got my clearance, etc., etc., etc. And then I lost power. And something happened that made the story more interesting. And so, then you have a little bit more tension and so on. But then, here are all of the different things that I tried to resolve the issue, and nothing worked. I was able to break through the clouds because of a lucky trick of the weather and so on, and took advantage of the situation and was able to land successfully and went on with my life. So the moral of the story, if you want to go that far, would be persistence and, never give up, because you never know when you're going to get a lucky break, and, finish the story there. You just need to be ready for whatever happens and have the skills to take advantage of what you can use and what is working for you. So still a great story, told chronologically. That's kind of how it works. And these peaks here are kind of the key interest points where people will have the most interest in what you're saying. So here's another option of how to tell the story. And here's the beginning and here's the end. So this way of telling a story is actually about the audience, not necessarily about the story itself. So the same story you could use in different circumstances, either as a high school commencement speech or as an interview. Somebody asks you the question, tell me about a time when you solved a really difficult problem and how did you do it? Or you're sitting around the hangar with your buds, and telling this story. Or you're sitting around at Thanksgiving, talking to your family about the situation. And so, you are saying, an interesting thing happened to me. This is why I'm telling this story and how it ties to the current situation. Maybe there was a difficult situation with cooking the turkey. And, this is how I resolved this situation. But, and then you want to talk about why people should listen to this story and what was the most interesting thing that happened. There was a time when I completely lost electrical power in my aircraft and was able to, obviously I'm here today eating turkey with you. So, here's how that all came to pass. And then you tell some of the chronological pieces and you build tension kind of deliberately of here are all of the different things that I tried and so on. You build up to a logical conclusion of here's what happened and here I was able to fix the situation. Then you tie it back into the why and say, and now when I run into a problem with a turkey or anything else, I think about that time and I remember the lessons that I learned from that. Now, the difference in this structure versus this structure is this one works in a marketing context because you only have 2 to 5 seconds to capture people's attention and curiosity so that they will listen to the rest of the story. Now, if you've got captive audience at a Thanksgiving table or something like that, that might not be as important, but it still can be very effective because if you get all the grandkids listening to you, they're a whole lot more likely to find the story effective and compelling and to use the lessons that they learned from it in their own life. So, this is worth noting. And then, of course, you've got the key point in the story or the high point of here's how we resolved the issue and was able to land successfully, and then ending again with the why. Bringing that all back together into here's why I was telling this story today and how this leads back to the question you asked or the situation at hand or whatever the situation is. So 2 ways of telling the same story. One of them I think is a little bit more effective for a marketing scenario, or even for the Thanksgiving table. So I hope you enjoyed that. One thing we love to do in our group office hours is to improve on things that our clients are working on. So, in some situations, they may be looking for ways to improve the way that they tell a story in a pitch deck or in a sales presentation or something along those lines, or even, if they're setting up for a keynote speech or something like that. It's really good to polish these things with an audience of aviation professionals. So that's one of the really great things about our group office hours. We do those once a week and work on whatever anybody wants to work on. And they're real short sessions, 15 minutes apiece, but sometimes this is exactly what you need to polish a short story or take whatever you're doing to the next level, and that can make a huge difference in how powerful something can be in marketing and for any other purpose. So if you're not a current client, we do free consultations, so I'd be happy to help you with whatever marketing problem you happen to have. Talk to you soon.